Good afternoon. It is just afternoon in Eastern Standard Time. This is Brian Hartman, and I have the pleasure of having Chris Morhardt with me this afternoon. We are going to be talking to you today about our little fireside chat about the gathering storm. Are we facing a recession? And the interesting part is, I'm not sure how many people seem to think at this point that we are in a recession. So it's been an interesting couple of months here, I would say, right, Chris?
No, it has been. Yeah, and I don't know if we're in it now, but there's just speculation and reason for maybe not concern, but a thought process anyway. Hey, Carri.
Hey, guys. Sorry about that. Internet's playing interesting games this afternoon.
So for those of you out there, Carri Nicholson is Pharus Global's Leadership and Growth Associate in the UK. So we're actually talking to you live, national and international today. Welcome to the show, Carri.
I'm delighted to be here, and it's demonstrating that Pharus really is global.
That is very true. It's
Right.
Pretty awesome. So we kind of went through a little bit, Carri. I know you had a little bit of technical difficulties. We're glad you can join us. We talked about gathering the storm. Are we facing a recession? I'm going to share my screen real quick. And I thought we'd start off. Let's see here. Thought we'd start off by talking about recession, a period of temporary economic decline during which trade and industrial activity are reduced, generally identified by a fall in gross domestic product, GDP, in 2 successive quarters. There's been a lot of conversation going around in the last month or two about whether or not we are in a recession. So I thought maybe we would start right there. And by the way, for those of you viewing today and on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, if you'd like to ask us any questions or just say hello, stop by, you can drop a question in the comments, and we'll be able to bring it up on the screen and say hello to everybody as we go forward. So feel free to do so. So, Carri, maybe you'd like to start off. Are we in a recession, and what exactly is that definition?
Okay, well, according to all the definitions about a recession, which is 2 successive quarters of a drop in GDP, both the US and Europe technically are in recessions. However, and there's a big however to that, there's certain things happening which make this one very different to what we've had in the past. First of all, the wise men, the 8 economists in the States who decide whether this is a recession or not, haven't made their decision yet. Now, they always do it as a retrospective. But the second thing is, this is the first recession in my lifetime that I can remember where we had really low unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something new. Typically, when we've had recessions before, by the time you get into 2 quarters, there are staff being laid off left, right, and center, and companies are really pulling in their horns. So I think we are in a recession. How businesses respond to it and the actions that they take now are going to determine how long this lasts and how well they come out of it at the other end.
I agree with you, Carri. I think that we're seeing something completely different than what history tells us it should look like. You know, when we entered into these times of recession or depression in the past, there were indicators that some we're seeing now, and then some are completely different. It's just, to me, it's been such an uncertain time that we want to reflect on history. We want to look and be intelligent in the decisions we're making, but at the same time, not allow fear to control our decisions. And so what I'm afraid of is that it'll become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So by definition, we're currently in a recession, but if people respond positively and we don't cut back, we don't lay off, we continue and maintain the course, we keep the course, then we might just sail right out of it.
It is very definitely going to be a case of holding your nerve. Now, when I'm looking at what's happening in the States and in the UK, we haven't really had the great resignation that has happened in the States. But equally, what we're not seeing is some of your big corporates, and they are particularly in the sectors where you could say they are nice to haves rather than needs to haves, overhired in the pandemic to deal with a specific challenge that they faced, i.e. the world going digital, and are now letting people go.
We do, if I can just interrupt real quick, Carrie, hold that thought for 2 seconds. We do have a comment from David Carrier saying recession is clear. 2 consecutive lower quarters are a recession. The government keeps changing the definition. What is the comparison of current employment versus pre-pandemic levels? I believe we are just getting back to that 2019 number. Am I wrong?
Oh, David, what an interesting question. Because getting back to pre-pandemic levels very much depends which sector you're in. So in a number of sectors, particularly the ones that supported the transition to digital, which we all had to undergo, and the transition to e-commerce, which most of us had to undergo as well, picked up significantly over the pandemic period. And so they are ahead of their pre-2019 levels. Other industries, and I'm thinking particularly transportation and hospitality, shed staff, and they are now scrambling to try and catch up. So this is where you've got this, it really depends which sector you're in as to what we're seeing with unemployment levels.
Great answer. Thank you, Carrie. Uh-oh.
I think there is also something, though, that doesn't get talked about a lot, and I've not seen it talked about on either side of the Atlantic. A lot of the people who left or were let go, or in the UK's case were put onto furlough, took that opportunity to think about where they really wanted to be. And what you have seen is a massive increase in the number of new small businesses.
Yes.
And that obviously affects employment levels, because if you're taking a whole bunch of people out of the market because they are now running their own businesses, then yeah, we're going to see a dip in employment levels.
Absolutely. So I think, one of the big things, I don't know, let me see if I can share this screen real quick. One of the biggest questions now is what causes a recession? And it starts off by saying everyone's wondering whether the economy is going into a recession or if we are already in one, but what causes it? So a recession caused by when a chain of events like a line of dominoes picks up momentum and does not stop until the economy shrinks. Each event is connected to something that happened before and something that will happen in the future. If the price of a hamburger goes up, you might stop buying hamburgers. This would impact the restaurant, and that would impact the server. There are many interconnected chains like this throughout the economy. The dominoes leading toward a new recession have started falling, but when will they stop? So that's another good question. Is it going to stop? And how do we figure that one out?
Oh, go on, Chris. You go first on that one.
The first thing that came to mind is the ones who seem to be in control is the Fed, adjusting interest rates and kind of controlling the flow. But it's such I go back to what I said before. We're in such an unprecedented time, coming out of a pandemic where business was essentially shut down, and then we went into this period of the great resignation, where people were just collecting unemployment. We were just talking to a business owner today who was struggling through that time period where his business was growing leaps and bounds, but he couldn't find anybody to work. So as business owners, we've been going through this issue after issue. So shutdowns, pandemics, employment issues, and now we're faced with hyperinflation and food shortages, supply chain issues. You name it, we've been facing it. And I think what proves our resiliency is just seeing that we're still kicking. Business is still going despite what everybody's saying is happening around us.
Yes, and that's not going to stop. And there are. So if we say that there are certain things that are completely out with our control in terms of the recession. So we have a rather nasty war going on, which is sucking in a number of countries on both sides of the equation. Now, if you're in anything that supports defense, your business is actually going to be doing really well, because the NATO alliance is supplying an awful lot of kit at this point in time, and that all has to be paid for, and that's all got to be ordered. So it's very much sector dependent, but the resilience is the key. And I think companies that plan now and have a good hard look at where they stand are going to be the ones who will see the dominoes stop toppling sooner.
Agreed. Yeah.
Another comment from David Carrier. So if the definition is weighted by employment, it should be a net gain value, not workers re-entering.
Yes, I think that is a very fair call. If it is workers re-entering the marketplace in terms of the sectors and jobs that they were in before, that is not a net gain. But there's another thing that we need to talk about when we talk about inflation being part of the cause and war being part of the cause and all the rest of it. One of the big challenges that there's been is housing and house prices getting insane. And so, although it hurts, I can understand why the Bank of England and the Feds are talking about raising interest rates, because if you can slow down the rate of housing prices, you're actually going to slow down the inflation that goes with everything else. Or that's the theory.
I think, and that brings us to the next screen I wanted to share, where we talk about the first domino to fall in this economic cycle was a spike in prices last year. That phenomenon is called inflation. Throughout 2021, inflation got worse. Virtually everything became more expensive. Car parts became more expensive, then cars became more expensive. Many products went through a similar disruption. The White House and Federal Reserve became worried about high inflation, but their efforts to control it had little impact. They knew inflation was causing a chain reaction that could hurt the economy, but they continued to be surprised when prices kept on rising. So
that is it is a hard one. I mean, I think we were starting to take action in the UK before you guys were, but it was by such tiny steps. And we were starting from such a ridiculously low base. And I think one of the challenges for businesses is they got used to money being very cheap.
Right.
I agree. So then we go a step further. Fears of U.S. going into recession as economy contracts for a second consecutive quarter. Early data would meet the international criteria for recession because the first quarter also saw a contraction, but the country's official arbiter of recessions is yet to make such a judgment. So isn't it funny? Are we or aren't we at this point?
Nobody wants to say. Yeah, and that's what I was getting to earlier, is that it could become more of a self-fulfilling prophecy if everybody just all of a sudden says, and we declare we're in a recession, now the panic hits and people start reacting. But we're kind of in a better place where we are right now, where we're uncertain, because instead of reacting, we'll continue to plow forward, I think.
I think you're absolutely right, Chris. I think when we start talking about when it becomes concrete and somebody says, right, that's it, we're in a recession. Every time I've been through a recession before, that is when business leaders, or a lot of business leaders, go, well, right, that's it. I'm not spending anything more. I'm going to park all investments. I'm not going to do anything except hunker down. And that's dangerous.
Right.
Because they're doing it. You can understand why they do it, because they're doing it to protect they think they're doing it to protect their businesses. But what happens is there's a knock-on effect, because all their suppliers are now in a bind because the deals that they were expecting to happen aren't happening. There is less product to go around, so the clients are having to pay more for it because the output has slowed down. And those businesses make themselves very unstable when it comes to the end of whatever it is, slump, recession, because it takes them much longer to ramp up.
So now the interesting thing is our administration is saying we're on the right path. U.S. President Joe Biden listed a series of economic achievements. He said, that doesn't sound like a recession to me. He added, it's no surprise that the economy is slowing down as the Federal Reserve acts to bring down inflation. We're on the right path, and we will come through this transition stronger and more secure. What are you guys' reactions to that?
Okay, I'm going to, as an outside observer, I would say I think he's saying the right things, because he is telling people, hold your nerve. We can get through this. He's also recognizing that there are things around the economy at this particular time which don't look like anything that any of the indicators we've had before. So from my side of the pond, looking at this, I would say, yeah, I can understand why he said that, and I don't have enough data to say that he's wrong.
I think you both hit it right on the head, and I have it on the screen. Biden tells us don't panic. Right? So we're trying to keep everybody from panicking by saying, we're really not there yet.
I was just laughing because it's probably the only point I've ever agreed on with our current administration. But I agree that, panicking is not the answer, and falling prey to the decision that we're in a recession will only cause that panic. So we have to be wise. We have to make preparations. We have to be smart about how we do business. But I think staying the course is the ultimate direction.
Interesting.
Yeah.
David Carrier said government is taking credit for good news, but they are not willing to stop spending to ebb the tide of inflation.
That's right.
Well, it's an interesting one because define what stop spending is. So spending includes, certainly on our side of the pond, that includes government salaries and teachers and healthcare workers and all of the rest of those. If you stop spending on those, one, your system is going to not be in a great state, but two, you're taking money out of the economy. So you're going to be careful about saying stop spending. Stop spending could also be, do we no longer support Ukraine because it's costing us? Is that, if we stop spending, and that is costing billions, let's not get away from this. But if we stop that spending, first of all that money going into defense companies who are supplying the kit that we are sending out to Ukraine and their employees, it's keeping them in jobs. The second thing is, do we really want the consequences of not doing that? Do we want to stop spending on infrastructure? Both countries have got infrastructure, roads, rail networks, air networks, which could be better than they are. So I think when you say the government has got to stop spending, you need to be very careful and define what you mean by not spending.
So we have another comment, Jeff Nicholson, the culture biocatalyst. Can we as business owners or as individuals spend our way out of recession? If so, on what should we be spending our money?
Can you spend your way out of a recession? I have to hold my hand up here and say that's actually my husband.
I had a feeling there might be a relationship there.
Yeah, so I'm delighted he's actually joining in and listening in on this. I think business owners are going to need to keep spending. It's what we talked about. It's about maintaining that level of investment so that your company is in a strong position to actually be able to keep going, doing the things that you do really well, doing some of them better than those who are pulling their horns in. Because if we don't put money into the economy as businesses, then there's not going to be money in the economy for people to spend with us as businesses. Kind of a circular thing.
Yeah, that was my thought too. It's not necessarily spending on new or different things. It's staying the course. Continue to purchase from the vendors you've been purchasing from. Just keep doing business the way you have been.
And we've been talking about this, Chris and Brian, about understanding if you are in a sector which is a nice to have rather than a need to have. And if you are in that sector, what can you do so that your customers come to see you as a need to have?
And that's going to make a big swing from what's a need to have now compared to what a need to have was a year ago.
Sure.
We do have another question from Johan Lopez. Is it time for the administration to increase domestic oil production to bring down the price of doing business nationally and globally? I think they've already, to me, it seems like they're trying to do that right now as it is anyway. As the price of gas is coming down. So I think that's at least a start. What do you guys think?
Well, I agree. I think domestic oil production needs to happen. So I'm in agreement.
I think at this point in time, yes, it does. I'm heartened by the fact that there is also spending going on renewable resources as well. But at this point in time, there are two ways that domestic oil production can make things better. First of all, it can bring down gas prices, and that is a massive deal for everybody. But the second is that it also frees up within the US economy. If you can ramp up oil production for a little bit, you've got the ability to export to countries that are really struggling just now.
I agree with that.
So maybe we should shift our conversation to one of preparation. I think that we need to be wise in our business practices for companies both small and large, and everyone in between. And so maybe we shift our conversation to some of those things that businesses can do to be prepared regardless of what happens. I think it's just good business to always be cognizant of what's happening economically in and around you. So maybe some of those thoughts of preparation would be good conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we've the three of us have talked about, we all see that there are things that business owners can and should be doing at this point in time to make sure their business is in the best possible shape. And my perspective is that there are certain areas that you absolutely have to go through with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that your business is as prepped as possible. So a big one is, how resilient is your business? How much runway does it have? What are your cash reserves looking like? Do you have a line of credit? Because if you don't have the financial support there, if for example, another big question that Brian and I talked about, if you're reliant on a few big clients and one of them pulls the plug, what's your alternative plan B? So what are your thoughts on resilience, Chris?
Well, I think what you just mentioned, making sure that there's some reserves for runway, in case things do shut down. Certainly analyzing your customer mix. And what we don't know right now is how much time we have. So if you're listening to this and you say, wow, Carri's right, I do rely on one or two major customers, and I think I ought to start diversifying. I guess the message is no time like the present to start, because we don't know how much time we have in order to do that. And depending on what industry sector you're in, that could be a long lead time. So I think, diversifying your customer base, making sure you've got good cash reserves, also exploring other options. These may be times for consolidation. Acquisitions and mergers can happen to stabilize companies. So if you've been thinking about that, maybe now's a good time to look a little deeper into some of those thoughts.
It's funny you say that. One of my old friends runs, I think his business is sitting at about $120 million now. He has lived through, this will be his fourth recession. He has almost doubled the size of the business every single time there has been a recession.
By acquisition?
And by acquisition, because money becomes comparatively cheap. And because a recession is the time when, if you are thinking about getting out, you may well get out for less. because you can't see into the future, and you're going, do you know what, I'll just take the money and run now. Mm-hmm. And so he has grown his business, doubled it in size literally every single time there's a recession. Get him talking, getting him to stop talking about the joys of a recession is sometimes a bit of a challenge, but that's how he's grown, because he has strategically, as he spots the signs that we might be entering a recession, he starts looking for people who are vulnerable.
I think that's a very good point. So are business owners going to feel vulnerable now, or are they going to look at it as an opportunity to potentially be able to sell while they're at the peak of the market before it goes further down?
The problem is, the three of us know you can't decide to sell a business overnight. So the only people who will be selling at the peak of the market now are the ones who have done the prep, who are going to get the real value for their business, because we know it's about a 3-year runway, because there's so many things that you need to put in place so that you are maximizing your EBITDA and therefore the value in the business. And it takes about 3 years to think about little things like, what's the succession plan going to look like? How do I want my earnout to be structured? So the people who sell now are going to be the people who have thought about it and knew they wanted to exit anyway, and have started doing the work already. What I fear is we're going to see a lot of people who will sell now and they think they're doing okay, but it's really a fire sale, because they're selling because they don't have the confidence in their business surviving.
So I think it's important to note a couple things. I recall coming out of the last recession, there were a lot of businesses we were working with that weathered the storm. They got through the recession, came out on the other side. They were still in business, but at that point they were tired. And so that's where we saw a lot of sales happening, and we're representing a lot of those sellers at that time. So even those who make it through may get to the other side and just realize, poof, that was enough. I'm done. Now I'm ready.
And for a lot of those people, they've just had 2.5 years of a pandemic, which, by the way, is still going on. So it is, and this is one of the things that when I'm talking about when I'm working with my CEO clients, we look quite a lot at personal resilience. It's when was the last time they took a proper holiday? How many hours are they actually working? Have they learned to delegate so that they're only doing the stuff that only they can do? Because the people, CEOs get burnout, and business owners and founders get burnout just as much as everybody else. And the really hard thing is they don't have safe spaces where they can talk about it, because they've got to be the voice of calm and sanity for their business.
And positiveness.
And positivity, yeah. Because you might be wanting to crawl underneath the table and go, oh, why me? It's so unfair. And it is unfair, and it is on you, because you're at the top of the tree. The challenge you have is that you cannot show that. Because if your staff think that you're struggling, if your staff think that you have concerns about the future of the business, they're all going to be brushing up their CVs at this point in time. If your suppliers think that you have concerns about it, well, guess what's going to happen the next time that you try and negotiate a deal with them? They'll be going, actually, might put you on slightly harsher terms, because if you don't have confidence in your business, then we're not sure we have confidence in it either. And so much of that confidence is just because of the culture that we have created over the last 50 years of working insane hours.
I think the other interesting point of when you go into a recession is that you will have the business owners that are going to think that it's time to sell so they can maximize their money. But on the flip side of that, then you start to run into unemployment. People are being laid off that are good qualified people that all of a sudden start to realize, I don't want this corporate world anymore. They begin to start up their own companies. So you see the flip side of it, where new businesses are being formed. And Chris, I think, what's interesting is maybe you could talk a little bit about how you founded Pharus Group in the last recession.
Yeah, that was coming to mind. And also, and I will, another thought I was having was, we tend to hear the word recession and then it sounds like bad news, right? But if you look at it as an opportunity, it could be the time for those mergers, or to take an opportunity to take some chips off the table. If you've got a great business, but something uncertain's coming, well, maybe it's time to partner up with another company and weather the storm together, and most likely grow to greater extent together than you can alone. So that's something that we advise our clients often on in that M&A space is, yes, it may be time to sell outright, but it also may be time to take some chips off the table, partner up, and merge with another company and now grow together and ultimately exit for more on the other side of the recession. So there's all sorts of different ways to look at these circumstances. What Brian was referring to is back in 2008, when we all understand what happened there in the U.S. Is why we go through reinvention. So I was practicing as a licensed land planner and landscape architect for 15 years, and had moved to Florida and was working for a company that was Florida based, and we were growing again during that time. Land development and entitlements was going through the roof, but then we saw the indicators and decided to dial back. And at that point in late 2007, it made more sense for me to leave that company and go on my own and try and figure out what do we do next. So it was a time of reinvention, and that's how Pharus Group was born. Since that time, it's grown and evolved, and thanks to wonderful partners and great employees, we have Pharus Global today.
And that strategic partnerships are so important. And also, a recession is a very good time. As you found in 2008, a recession is an awesome time to sit there and take stock and go, what will we do different? What do we need to do differently? And is this the right vehicle for doing it? Who's going to become our new best friend? And if we want to buy, who do we want to buy? If I was looking to grow my business through acquisition just now, I would be making a list of the companies that could really add something to my business that I'm beginning to suspect may be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So, as a reminder for everybody out there, we're talking about the gathering storm. Are we facing a recession? If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to send our way, feel free to drop them in the comments, whether you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. We do have another question that came up from Ellen Chacon up in Asheville, North Carolina. How can a company have a recession conversation with their employees to prepare them for effects like hiring freezes and suspended pay raises without causing panic?
It's a good question.
And I'm really glad you've asked that, Ellen, because far too many companies don't. So the first thing is that you need to think about what's the line in the sand for you as a company? Are you going to freeze, or are you going to have, if you're in a nice to have industry, do you have a gut feel you might need to let go? You need to have a plan, you need to have a strategy, and you then need to have some very open conversations with clear criteria about when those things get triggered. Because you're managing your employees' expectations. If you have to suspend the pay rise, you talk about it in that it's a suspension, not a cancellation. And what are the trigger points within the company that would allow you to reinstate the pay rise? So people know what they're working towards and where and what that looks like. Hiring freezes. Okay, why? Why are you doing the hiring freeze? How long you expect it to last for? What impact that's going to have on the business? And what plans you have in place to make sure that there isn't too much pressure being put on the people that you've currently got working there. What would you add to that, Chris?
What that question raised for me is just a good point in general. And I think that one of the biggest challenges in any company is communication. And so what Ellen's saying is, how are we going to communicate? And what you're saying is, how well are we going to communicate? If people understand the why behind what it is happening, then most people are willing to rise to the occasion. Where I see failure is when a company fails to communicate and it leaves everybody up to their own, to come up with their own creativity of what's happening. And that's where panic incites, because you've got potentially hundreds or thousands or just a number of different people all coming up with their own ideas of what's happening, and it causes issues. But if the company does a great job at communicating, here's where we are, here's what we're thinking, here's how it's going to play out, here's how it affects you, it'll squash all that potential for panic within the environment. That was a great question, Ellen.
David Carrier said the reduction in drilling was the impetus which kickstarted this global downturn. The administration is forcibly trying to prop up green energy while simultaneously eliminating the capacity of fossil fuels. I believe in green tech, but not because the government is subsidizing it. The capital markets will make it cost effective over time, not government deficit spending.
Agreed.
See, my take on that from the UK is very, very different, because despite the fact that it looks like we have been hit with massive energy price rises, the ridiculous thing is that the UK is about 97% energy. We produce our own energy. It's just the prices are set by global levels. In Scotland, which is where I'm currently speaking to you from, 97% of all energy in Scotland comes from renewable resources, from wind, from solar, from hydro. It doesn't get subsidized. And because we've been doing the tech for a long time, it is comparatively cheap. So we've currently got being built on Dogger Bank, which is a big sandbar in the North Sea. We've got the largest wind farm in the world is going in there, and that's going to power 7.5 million homes. But even on a small scale basis, one of my clients runs a recycling business, and they have spotted something to do with food waste. We all know there's a massive issue with food waste. They've set up a biogas generator using food waste, and they're now powering 7,500 homes.
Wow.
In their local area. So the decision to reduce drilling is not something that was taken just in America. It happened all over. And part of that was because we actually were being fed cheap gas and cheap oil from Russia. So there's all sorts of things in it. I don't know. It's a hard one, because the companies that are going into the green tech are going to create an awful lot of jobs in the future.
Yeah.
Carri, would you like to take a few minutes to talk about the recession resilience audit and what we have?
Yeah. Because Pharus Global has been talking about, for the last couple of months, about how we can best support our clients. One of the things that we've come up with is a recession resilience audit, which you can either do yourself, or if you would feel more comfortable, you can book a slot and I will go through it with you. But it's based on our combined 80 odd years in business and going through 3 of these beforehand, knowing the things that we know that business owners and leaders need to have nailed to actually put their business in as strong a position as possible. So it's online. You can do it yourself. Don't want to do it yourself, then let us know and we'll give you a time. We'll come up with a mutually agreeable time and I can actually talk you through it. But it's designed to be as easy to complete as possible. It's all tick boxes and drop down boxes. And the whole aim of it is to get you to think about where your business is now and what you might need to do to get yourself in as good a position as possible to ride this one out.
I love the that cover photo. It looks like the storm is coming. Are we gathering the storm? Is that you looking out in the ocean, Mr. or Mrs. Business Owner out there?
Yeah. Well, at least, hey, listen, that one is ready. That person is ready because they've got their oilskins on.
That's right. That's right.
So they've at least done the basic preparation.
And this is the actual audit, so you can see exactly what takes place. It is confidential, so you don't have to worry about anybody else knowing what your answers are. I think that's important to let everybody know. But it's a simple, kind of, I like to say multiple guess instead of multiple choice. It kind of gives you everything that you wanted to be able to find out. Is it something that you really need to dig into?
How do you access it, Brian?
We do have a link that we'll be able to share with anybody that is interested. We'll get it out on LinkedIn. We're going to put it out in our newsletter as well, or you can contact any of us.
We'll put it in the comments in the YouTube channel as well.
Absolutely. And this is being recorded, so we will be able to send out the recording of this as well. Let's see if there's any other comments, questions. Nope. Everything looks pretty clear.
I would, Ellen says, can we share the link? Yes, we absolutely will share the link. I would also say, whether you think you're prepped or not, you should take this audit, because on the upside, it is potentially going to validate a lot of the stuff that you've already done. But it's also going to show where you need to perhaps put a little bit more work in to make you ready. It is confidential. This doesn't get shared with anybody. It's strictly between us and you. But please do it, because it will let you know how prepped you are to face what we've got coming up.
What I like about it, it's just thought-provoking in and of itself. So as you go through, you answer the questions, you can see very glaringly where you might have some weaknesses.
Yeah.
Things that need to be addressed.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to thank David Carrier and Jeff Nicholson, who Carri might know pretty well, Johan Lopez, Ellen Chacon, and also we got some likes on Facebook, Pete Previtt, David Albrecht, Christina Miller, near and dear to my heart. That's my girlfriend. And Braulio Veras also liked the show. Don't hesitate, everybody. If you do have any further questions, you can go to pharusglobal.com, be able to get our contact information as well. And we're happy to reach back out and give you more information. We will be getting this out to as many of you as possible. Jenna Colvin says, fantastic insight. Thank you for this. Thanks for watching, Jenna. We appreciate it. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
I would just say prior planning and preparation prevents pretty poor performance.
Wow, say that again.
Now is
Say that 3 times.
Yeah, I made that. That was the polite version. But it is absolutely true. And now is the time to do the prior planning.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like the equivalent of the hurricane preparation that we go through in Florida, beginning in like May as the hurricane season comes. Unfortunately, it is what it is. We can't make it stop, but we need to get everybody's head out of the sand. It's time to prepare.
And the thing is, we actually, like the hurricane preparation season, you prep so that when the big siren goes off or the weatherman says there's one coming in your direction and you've got 2 days notice, it's an easy, we know what we're doing. We've got our plans in place. This is where we're going, rather than I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, and that's the point. I mean, if it never comes, that'd be great news, but your business will be stronger for it. So I think what we're talking about here is prepare, be intelligent about your business practices, get every department and every aspect of your company as strong as it can be, think ahead to what could be coming, and then just maintain the course. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to change anything, but go through, take an inventory, and make sure your business is as strong as it can be. And then if there are opportunities to investigate, look into them. Might be a good way to just shift gears a little bit.
But also the big thing, and something that is very dear to my heart, do not think you have to do this by yourself.
Yes.
Because that's why we're here, for you to bounce ideas off, for you to have a support network in place. Don't try and go this alone, because it's lonely enough being a CEO without anything else being added onto it.
Yeah. Great point, Carri.
Excellent. David Carrier says, thank you for a great panel. David, thank you for joining us and for your questions. We appreciate it. All right. Anything else before we go?
Next time we actually need the fire, though. We had a fireside chat with no fire.
That's true. I knew it would be one thing I would forget. Well, thank you, Chris and Carri, for being on with us today. And as always, it's a pleasure working with both of you. And hopefully we can help change some lives going into whatever the future is going to bring.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you very much.
Take care of it.
Thanks, Carri.
Have a good afternoon, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.